things to cover. I'm just going to try to focus here on the three things. So these are all my concepts.
Please use the microphone.
I cannot do microphone and look at this.
Look at the brand you have on the screen.
But it's not the same screen.
Okay, we'll do this one.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
It's a bit complicated.
Sorry, what was it? Now you're good. Everything is programmed.
All right. So, as I was introduced, I identify myself as a Roma. So, when I'm speaking from this position as a person who has a BA, MA in philosophy, and will have a PhD also soon, I just wanted to say that I am, at this moment with this presentation, I am presenting terms and concepts which I invented because I basically do not have on what to rly on when I'm speaking about Roma epistemology. Critical Roma theory is a very new field and very nuanced in all kinds of ways, and especially in epistemological and philosophical terms. So in this presentation, I'm going to present three terms that basically I invented, not on my own. They did not drop from the sky, but I rely on certain kind of production which is present and which is basically theory of whiteness, but other also corpuses of theoretical knowledge. So European cultural supremacy, cultural privileges, and cultural epistemicalization will be the three terms which are going to operate in this presentation. When I'm speaking about Gajo, I wanted you to know that Gajo means non-Roma in Roma language. So non-Roma can be also white or non-white people, and so there is this politics of relation with Gajo who are also not white, but I'm not going to deal with it in this presentation. So when I'm referring to Gajo, I'm thinking about usually Eastern Europeans, white people who are non-Roma. Okay. So this my work is referenced on Walter Mignola's work, The Darker Side of Western Modernity, and all this introduction of coloniality, modernity group. And what is their basic premise is that coloniality and modernity are the same. They're different sides of a coin. So in my context, when I'm speaking about Roma in Europe, I'm trying to understand how this operates when we apply this concept of coloniality, post-coloniality in Europe. How does it work in the context of Roma? So I'm speaking about Eastern European post-coloniality as in some analogy with modernity. So also I wanted to say that I'm dealing with epistemological terms based on the Ficker's idea about justice. So it's testimonial justice in the context of that, so there are certain kind of subjects which suffer from testimonial justice. And these are people who cannot really have a deficit of credibility and only to the operation of prejudice in the hearer's judgment. So that would mean that not just, so a woman can be in this position, that they're not considered as credible witnesses. Also black people or all like non-white people, but definitely Roma in the context of lack of credibility of what they're saying. In academic context, that would mean that Roma as epistemological subjects have this disadvantage, and I want you just to have this in mind. Also, hermeneutical injustice, which refers to marginalized groups, usually who have low access to knowledge production in general. And they suffer from certain kind of lack of concepts and to refer to their experiences, the things that are happening to them. In this context, I would say that different kinds of subjects can find themselves in this position. Eastern Europeans usually think that they find themselves comparing to the Western Europe, and now I'm just thinking about Roma in the context of Eastern Europe also. This is something that I just wanted to say, that I'm not just considering epistemology in the context of philosophical, academical terms, but I'm introducing this sociological aspects and relying on this production of Kotonji, who actually wrote about this feeding factories of universities and research centers, and speaking about scientific production as economic production. So all this kind of like events, whatever we do here, it has certain kind of economy. Also, I want to to think about it through colonial perspective. So he's talking about the third world countries, and he's speaking about colonialism in parallel with this academic terms, and the draining the material riches goes hand in hand with intellectual and scientific exploitation, the extortion of secrets and another useful information, as it was natural on a different level that they go hand in hand with the extortion of works of art meant to fulfill the museums of the metropolitan areas. So I'm just putting in the parallel, okay, so this kind of, these levels. When we think about this knowledge production, we cannot think without this. Okay. Now, global white supremacy. So, as I said, I didn't come to this idea just on my own. I just want to see it in the parallel with how I define it. It's socio-cultural, economic, political model of Gadjo domination as foundation of European Gadjo privileges. I created this term based on the Mills's notion of global white supremacy, who see this idea, how to say, through time and space. And race, of course, is not biologically deterministically explained. It's a social construct, but it persists through time and space. So this is how Charles Mills, one of the rare black philosophers, born in London, lived in Jamaica, and now working in New York. Sorry, he's dead. And so the point being that he did not consider that the supremacy must exist in the legal framework, I don't know, chattel slavery or something, but it persists even though we can have democratic states or whatever, but they come through different fields. This is economic, cultural, cognitive, evaluative, somatic, and it says metaphysical spheres. So in that sense, I'm thinking about the domination of non-Roma people in Europe, and I'm claiming that there is such a thing as European supremacy of non-Roma people over Roma. So why I claim this, it's a long story, but it's basically mainly evidence-based, because if you take any kind of report about how Roma live today, you will see where they are and how much they are discriminated against. And so there are no Roma in politics, in economy, in public life, in culture. So it's a very, very underprivileged situation, so I would say, at the least. Other things are that this system of global supremacy, and in European terms, when we translate it to Gadjo supremacy, brings up white privileges in the context of how Macintosh defines it. And she was a white woman who was trying to address her own privileges as a white woman. So she explained it and said that it's like a package of other assets that we are carrying with us. So it's a bag with certain kind of things, maps, passports, code books, visas, clothes, etc. And so there's a very difficult, how you can explain this to people who are Eastern Europeans that they have privilege. It's a very difficult talk, especially Balkan people, especially people from Kosovo. Like, how are they going to think about it? So it is a job to explain how this works. In the context of Roma, I'm just translating this, and I'm saying that there is this package that even though you might be non-Roma from Kosovo, you might still have this privilege. So I'm claiming that there are Gadjo privileges. these privileges, just shortly to briefly map it, I would say they're zero sum. So if somebody has these privileges, somebody else does not have them. So it's a zero sum. Different areas of life they appear. They're in public life, in culture, also in academia. They're intersectional, which means that, okay, that's what I said. So you can also be very, very poor, but at the same time you have this privilege that you are non-Roma. And if you take the statistics, you will see that Roma are multiple times poorer than the poorest non-Roma. So there is this, still privileges that you can cash in. These privileges exist through time and space. So since Roma came to European continent, basically, 12 centuries according to some authors, I claim that they were treated in this way as some others, orientalized, racialized, and that they, from that point on, they have this discrepancy, and non-Roma have these privileges based on this otherness. Also that these are transgenerational privileges, so that somebody actually can benefit in the next generation from these privileges of their ancestors in the context of Holocaust or porajmos, how Roma call it. This is very important because all the systems that Roma actually built until that time were devastated. So academic elite, which was very, mildly appearing, disappeared, economic wealth disappeared, etc., etc. And especially in the context of knowledge production, I would say that this is really important. Because now Roma do not really have their own academics, historians to think about these issues and to remember. And there are, but there are very few. Okay, and I would say that these privileges are just at least on two accounts, in the sense that they are in the context of meritocracy. Academia is very famous for its idea of meritocracy. Roma and non-Roma academics are not the same, so it cannot be meritocracy. And based on past injustices, because it's unearned what non-Roma now have comparing to Roma. Okay, some examples I put here. I have a paper on this, but I just wanted to point education, for example, that Gajo are more likely to be able to learn from textbooks by Gajo authors, less likely to be exposed to a group to othering, presented in negative light. And you can think about this also in academic terms, like who can be actually an academic. So there are very few Roma. I would say it's a 10%, for example, in Serbia, approximately majority population of highly educated people. In Serbia, there is less than 1%. So who is going to actually come to academia? Who is going to get this possibility to produce knowledge? Especially even if you come to academia, who is going to get a professorship? Who is going to get, the resources and stuff? So these are privileges that should be considered also in the academic production. Of course, in culture, because Gajo politics, for example, of memory, are more likely to be funded and to be supported, especially in context of Serbia. So some remembrance, of course, exist. Serbian victims might be mentioned, but Roma are very rarely mentioned. So, and even the monuments which exist, for example, to Shaban Bajramović, a famous folk singer, are destroyed, and and he could not really actually get a street even in which he lived because people didn't allow. Okay, because these are things that require certain kind of intervention in the academic community, because they, so if you want to consider yourself anti-racist, decolonial, to deal with these notions, it would require for you as an academic to deal with these issues, to actually be aware of this positionality of Roma, who are actually racialized, orientalized, othered, etc. I'm not introducing this because there are a lot of papers which are talking about this orientalization and racialization of Roma, so I'm just presupposing this. Okay, so I wanted to know how these Eastern Europeans actually prepare, how they work with this notion of race and racialization in Eastern Europe. So I took, so I just searched and tried to find some papers. This was just basic methodology, some snowball sampling, and I went through the text of the authors who dealt with this, and searched for the word Roma or Gypsy, because Gypsy is not really, it should be used, but it's used, but it's a pejorative term, yeah, so it shouldn't be used, but anyway. Yeah, I don't know why I put this veliko. Okay. Because this is the examined work, you can see some references. This is not all the work that I read, but some of this I included actually. So these are some of the names of people who produced some seminal works dealing with race and racialization on the Balkans especially. And okay, so how did Roma idea appeared there? So first of all, the Roma are not mentioned. So there are very, very scarce, references to Roma. And there is this gadget washing that racism without race exists. So this is the rhetoric of Balkanization. Because, so Eastern Europeans consider being racialized because all people involved are white. And they completely forget about Roma and their racialization. Bakic Kaigan also speaks about nesting Orientalism, and the Roma are also, in this case, not mentioned. Nesting Orientalism is that all political groups on the Balkan are considering other groups as somebody who is the other. And Roma are not appearing in any context, so it's amazing what happens in this world. Roma are not appearing at all. They're mentioned as Nazi victims, but just mentioned. Nothing was really elaborated. Most of the cases are in demography, yes, but they appear as a phantasm of Western Europeans who think about Eastern Europeans. So Roma are actually in this context appearing, and there is a certain kind of skepticism if racism actually exist against Roma in Eastern Europe. So this is, for example, which Todorova, yes, imagine in the Balkans. So she says that she's questioning this anti-Roma racism. So of course this exceptionalism is with Gržanić also. She's tossing the ball of racism to the Western people, and she's saying, yeah, they're trying to discipline us to being a good, European citizens by this. So racism against Roma doesn't appear at all. And silencing, of course, even when Roma appear, when they do appear, these are folk singers, for example, Esma Recipova, who is cited, but it's of course secondary source, and she says how famously that the best, Tito was the best statesman in these parts because he liked us. I think it's a spelling mistake. But so when they appear, so this is what I realized from this research. So Roma are not mentioned, that's one point. Roma are mentioned as a phantasm, so somebody is appearing from the West and saying, oh, this Roma exotic, but they consider it actually as a part of Eastern European stereotypization. If you analyze paratext, that means not just what is said, but how it is written and stuff. Roma are mentioned in one sentence in a body of the text or one word. Gypsy is used, which is a pejorative term, small initial letter. When you speak about Roma, it's like a small capital letter, a small letter. Roma mentioned in footnotes. So this is a practice. More than often you will find them in footnotes. On the right side, I just remembered to put Sarah Ahmed, who was speaking about this policy of putting people in brackets, putting people, in references which I named actually epistemic slums. So as Roma are living physically in slums, they're in academic terms put in references in epistemic slums. And Roma bodies do not really exist. Roma mentioned by other authors, so it's a delayed signification. They did not remember themselves, but they are citing other authors who are mentioning them. And that is deontologization. So Roma bodies are not present. When they are present, when they appear, like in the context of this famous folk singer, they are silenced. So there are no Roma speakers. They are not informants. First of all, they are not informants. Somebody is speaking about them, but they are not informing this conversation. It's all between Gađa people, okay? And they're not art authors. So there is certain kind of Roma academic production right now, and they could have used it, but they either don't know about it, they don't consider it relevant. So there is no this epistemic, authorship, nothing. At the end, I came to this idea of devouring. So the Roma communities become what I called post-territorial colonies. So we Roma did not have this, our territory, which would be colonized, but we can consider Roma being post-territorial colonies in the context of post-modernity and post-coloniality. Of course, their bodies and lives become bioproperty, in that sense that you can extract from these bodies some kind of value, some kind of information, and this information basically is the meaning of Roma signifier. Their value is in the term that they can empty the signifier, which can then be filled with the suffering and pain of Eastern European Gađa people, who will then complain how they are treated badly by Western Europeans. So yeah, that's basically it. I just wanted to say that this deficit and destabilization of the meaning of white Eastern European subjectivity, this is the purpose why this can be seen as a colonization exploitation, basically, because this empty signifier, because first bodies are disappearing, voice is disappearing, at the end you have this floating phantasm, floating signifier, which then you can feel actually with this white signification purposes, and substitute this deficit destabilization meaning of white Eastern European subjectivity. And in the word of Kotonji, then you can say that the subjectivities are devoured, disappear, made unreal in terms of industrial production, and I would say these are Gađa academic laboratories. So this is basically a critique of Gađa academia. Yeah, so I would stop there. There are different kind of stuff I wanted to say, but yeah, okay, so.